Welcome to the DX Today podcast, your daily deep dive into the AI ecosystem. I'm Chris, and joining me as always is Laura. And today we are unpacking what might be the most consequential leak heading into Google I/O 2026.
I have been waiting all week to talk about this one, Chris, because if even half of what we are seeing from the Gemini Omni leak is real, then Google just changed the entire conversation about what a foundation model actually is in May of 2026.
For listeners who have been heads down this week and missed it, give us the 30-second version of what actually leaked, who leaked it, and why people inside the AI video community are completely melting down over this little user interface string.
On May 2nd of 2026, an ex-user noticed a tiny line of text inside the Gemini video tab that read, quote, "Start with an idea or try a template, powered by Omni," and that one phrase has launched 1,000 think pieces since.
Hold on, let me make sure I understand the timeline correctly. We are recording this on Saturday, May 16th of 2026, which means Google's I/O Developer Conference kicks off this coming Tuesday and Wednesday, May 19th and 20th. Is that right?
That is exactly right, Chris, and the timing is what makes this leak so loaded. Google has a long history of seeding internal UI strings into production builds just days before a major reveal, almost as if they want the buzz to build organically beforehand.
I want to push back on the hype machine for a second, though. We've all seen UI strings ship inside apps that never become actual launched products. What makes the Omni leak different from your average Google rumor that goes nowhere?
3 things make this one feel real to me. First, multiple credible testers, including a Reddit user, got early access and posted actual generated video samples. Second, the workflow is fully built out with templates. Third, the timing window aligns precisely with the I/O keynote slot.
Okay, so let's actually get into what Omni reportedly does and why it matters. When you say unified multimodal model, what does that mean in plain language for a listener who does not live inside the foundation model debate every single day?
Think of it this way, Chris. Today, when you want a video from Google, you talk to Gemini, but behind the scenes, Gemini hands your prompt off to Veo, which is a separate specialized video model trained to do one thing well, which is generate frames.
So it is sort of like calling an Uber, and the dispatcher routes you to a specialty driver who only does airport runs. And you never actually meet the driver, you just see the result. That is the current Gemini plus Veo architecture today.
Exactly that. And what Omni proposes is collapsing that handoff entirely. One brain, one set of weights, one unified model that can take a text prompt, an existing image, or a video clip, and then natively generate or edit any of those formats together.
Let me steelman the skeptics here. Why is that architecturally better? Because from where I sit, having a specialized video model and a specialized text model that talk to each other actually sounds more efficient than trying to do everything in one giant model.
That is the classic specialization versus generalization debate. And historically, specialization wins on quality benchmarks. But unified models win on something the benchmarks never quite capture, which is workflow coherence and the ability to edit creatively without losing the context of what came before.
Walk me through a concrete example so this stops feeling like an abstract architecture argument. What can a user actually do with Omni that they cannot do today with the current Gemini frontend, calling out to Veo 3.1?
Here's the killer demo from the leaked samples. You generate a 10-second clip of a dog running through a park. Then you tell Omni, in the same chat window, change the dog to a golden retriever, remove the watermark in the corner, and warm up the lighting.
And it actually does all 3 edits while preserving the rest of the scene without you having to regenerate the entire video from scratch? Because if so, that is genuinely a different product category from Sora 2 or Veo 3.1 or Kling 3.
Correct, and that is the philosophical fork in the road. Sora 2, Kling 3.0, and Seedance 2.0 are pure generation tools. You prompt, they create, and if you want changes, you re-prompt from scratch and pray for similar results.
Whereas Omni is being positioned as a generation tool that also edits in place, which is much closer to how a human filmmaker actually works on a set, iterating shot by shot, never throwing away the whole reel just to swap one prop.
Precisely. And this is why I keep using the word workflow to describe Omni's real advantage. Quality-wise, the Artificial Analysis Video Arena leaderboard as of mid-May 2026 still has Seedance 2.0 ranked number 1 globally in both categories.
That is a useful reality check because the narrative I have been seeing on social media this week is that Omni is going to completely steamroll every other video model in existence. But Seedance from ByteDance is apparently still beating everyone on raw pixels.
That is correct, and VO 3.1 sits below Seedance, with Kling 3.0 and Sora 2 also trailing Seedance on the public arena leaderboards. Omni's early qualitative scores are placed behind Seedance on pure generation quality, ahead on integration.
So we have a fascinating split developing in the market. On one axis, you have raw video quality, where the Chinese labs and OpenAI lead. On the other axis, you have unified workflow, where Google is making a very deliberate bet with Omni.
And the bet is essentially this, Chris. Google is wagering that most users do not care about the marginal extra fidelity on a single 10-second clip. They care about being able to iterate, edit, and finish a creative project inside one chat window.
That is a very Google bet to make. They have always optimized for the integrated workflow inside their own ecosystem, rather than for raw component benchmarks. Think about how search works, or how Gmail's Smart Compose hooks into the rest of Workspace today.
Right, and there is another thread I want to pull on, which is the compute story. Early testers reported that 2 video generations consumed most of their daily AI Pro quota, which tells us Omni is enormously expensive to run on inference at scale.
That is a really important data point that I think is getting lost in all the excitement about features. If 2 videos burn through a Pro quota, then either Google is going to ration access aggressively, raise prices, or eat enormous gross margin losses during launch.
All 3 are probably true to some degree. The trick Google has historically used is to soft launch the most expensive features inside the Gemini Advanced or AI Ultra tiers, which are the $79 and $249 a month plans.
Let me put on my product manager hat for a minute. If I am a marketer or a creative agency thinking about which video tool to standardize on for the back half of 2026, does this Omni leak actually change my purchasing decision?
I would say it complicates it rather than resolves it. If you need cinematic fidelity for a brand campaign right now, Seedance and Sora are still the safer picks. If you need iterative editing inside an agent loop, you wait 2 weeks and see what Google ships.
There is a competitive dynamics piece I want us to get to, because OpenAI just did something really interesting in the weeks leading up to this, which was effectively pull back on the standalone Sora video app and refocus on integration inside ChatGPT.
That move from OpenAI looks much smarter now in hindsight, Chris. The strategic message from both leading labs is converging fast. Standalone video apps are dead, and the future is video generation living natively inside the same chat session you already use every day.
Which means the real winners and losers from Omni might not be the video model labs at all. The real losers might be the standalone video tool startups that built entire businesses on the assumption that video would stay a separate vertical workflow forever.
I think that is exactly right, and you can already see VC sentiment shifting on this. The Series B rounds for standalone AI video tools have gotten harder to raise in the last month, and several mid-stage companies are now reportedly pivoting to enterprise services.
Let me ask a slightly contrarian question. Is there a world in which Omni actually disappoints when Google does take the I/O keynote stage on Tuesday, and the leak ends up being more interesting than the actual shipping product turns out to be?
Absolutely, and we should hold that possibility seriously. Google has overpromised at I/O before. Remember the original Bard demo gaffe in 2023 or the Gemini image generation rollout pause in 2024? There is real risk Omni ships with sharp constraints.
What would a disappointing version of Omni actually look like? Because I want listeners to have something concrete to watch for on Tuesday morning, rather than just generic skepticism about every product launch demo we ever see on a keynote stage.
A disappointing Omni would look like this. It is technically a unified model, but the video generation is rate limited to 1 or 2 clips per day on the free tier. The 10-second cap is hard, and the editing only works on Google-generated content.
And a genuinely category-defining Omni launch would look like what, in your view? Give me the bull case that would actually justify all the breathless coverage we have been seeing across the AI press for the last 2 weeks before the keynote.
The bull case is this: Omni ships with 30-second clips, supports editing of arbitrary user-uploaded video, includes a public API with reasonable pricing, integrates natively into YouTube Shorts and Google Photos, and runs on the same context window as everything else in Gemini 3.
That last point about a unified context window is so important, and I think underappreciated. If Omni can reference your entire chat history, your uploaded documents, your images, and now your video clips all in one context, that is a fundamentally new kind of creative tool.
Yes, and the implications go well beyond marketing content. Think about education, where a teacher can prompt a 5-minute lesson video that adapts to a specific student's learning history. Think about journalism, where reporters can illustrate stories without ever opening a separate video editor application.
I want to bring this back to something we touched on earlier, which is the question of what Omni actually is under the hood. You mentioned 3 interpretations floating around the rumor mill. Walk listeners through each one and tell us which you find most plausible.
Sure, so interpretation 1 is that Omni is just a rebrand of the existing VO pipeline with a fancier marketing name. Interpretation 2 is that Omni is a brand new Gemini-trained video model that runs alongside VO as a separate option for users.
And interpretation 3 is the one that would actually be revolutionary, which is that Omni is a true single weights, unified model handling text, image, audio, and video natively in one neural network without any model chaining or specialized video subsystems behind the scenes.
I am going to plant my flag on interpretation 3 being at least partially true. The UI string explicitly says powered by Omni, not powered by VEO, and Google would not bother with the rebrand if it was just the same thing under the hood.
That is a reasonable read, and the strategic logic supports it too. Google has the data, the compute, and the research talent at DeepMind to actually build a true Omni model. And they have been telegraphing this direction in research papers since late 2025.
Which brings up another angle nobody is talking about enough, which is what this means for the open source ecosystem. If Google ships a closed Omni model with these capabilities, the pressure on Meta, Mistral, and Alibaba to release competitive open weights becomes enormous overnight.
Meta in particular has been quiet on the video generation front compared to where Llama leads on text. If Omni lands well next week, I would expect a Meta video model announcement within 60 to 90 days, possibly tied to a major Llama 4 release.
I would put even money on that prediction, Chris. The video generation race is the one frontier where Meta has been most conspicuously absent, and Jan LeCun has been hinting at multimodal research breakthroughs in his recent talks at academic conferences this spring.
Okay, before we wrap, give listeners 3 specific things to watch for during the Google I/O keynote on Tuesday morning that will tell them whether Omni is the real deal or whether it ends up as just another carefully staged demo that never ships at scale.
Number 1, watch for a specific pricing announcement because real products have real pricing tiers. Number 2, watch for live unedited demos rather than pre-recorded sizzle reels. Number 3, watch for a same-day API that access announcement for developers and partners.
Those are 3 excellent tests. And I would add a 4th, which is whether Sundar Pichai or Demis Hassabis explicitly uses the phrase unified model on stage. That single phrase will tell us how confident Google is in the underlying architecture they have built here.
Great addition, and one final thought before we close. Whatever Google ships next week, the bigger story is that the entire foundation model industry just consolidated around a single product idea, which is one chat window, all modalities, native editing, no model chaining anywhere.
That is a perfect note to end on. And a reminder that even when individual product launches disappoint, the structural direction of the industry continues to march in one unmistakable direction. We will be back on Monday with reactions to whatever Google actually unveils at the keynote. That's all for today's episode of the DX Today podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.